Welcome to Book Talk, everyone. My name is Drew Hamilton, and I'll be your host again today. I'm lucky to be joined today by Gordon Gebert. Gordon is the co-author of the book Kiss and Tell, which was written with Bob McAdams, and Kiss and Tell is a book written from the perspective of being best friends with a rock star, that rock star being Ace Frehley of the band Kiss. Gordon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Drew, how you doing?
Doing great. We were talking a little bit before the interview. I guess you're a little under the weather.
Quite under the weather. Between doing radio interviews and I have a really bad cold, so I hope everybody forgives me out there for my voice.
All right, well, we'll wing it and just have a glass of water with you.
Yeah, all righty.
All right, sounds good. Well, hey, before we get into the guts of the book and your life with Ace, why don't we start off with why you wrote the book?
It took a lot for me to do. I always start out my interviews by saying I don't like the tell-all authors, the Kitty Kellys and the Pamela DeBars and all the Elvis hanger-ons. They all wrote tell-all books, and they mainly did it to make a buck. And I'm not here to say I'm not here to make a buck. Of course I am. But it took a real lot for me to do because I don't want to go into all this negative stuff, but Ace and I had a falling out over money. And that's still not good enough reason to write a tell-all book in my eyes. But Ace accused me of embezzling and stealing money, falsely accused me of this, never charged me with it, but he publicly pointed fingers at me. And the book was my way of, I wouldn't use the word retaliate, but respond to his allegations.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, we'll kind of go in chronological order, so we'll get to that story, a little more details later on. Cool. Why don't we start from our beginning and work our way through it chronologically? I guess, actually, if you can just speak for Bob real quick, why don't you tell us how he met him? I guess he was a childhood friend, and then you met Ace Frehley after he was done with Kiss. Why don't you just fill us in a little bit on both of your backgrounds and how you met Ace?
Yeah, I can speak for Bob because we're great friends for over 20 years.
Okay.
And Bob and I, he used to cut my hair. He was known as a famous hair cutter back in the days where all the wild rock and roll haircuts, were coming out.
Right.
And everybody went to Bob McAdams in the New York area because he was famous for his haircuts. But he met Ace when he was like in his early teens, 14, 15 years old, and they grew up in similar neighborhoods in the Bronx. And the stories in the book how they met. Actually, it was a confrontation between Bob and Ace. Bob was gonna kick Ace's ass, so to speak, in the Bronx. And that's what you did when you were younger and you grew up in the Bronx. You had your little groups of people and had your little wars and stuff like that. And then as they went on, they became friends and they had similar interests, music and girls and things like that.
Gotcha. And I guess growing up in the Bronx, I guess Ace knew they were friends once Bob gave him the Bronx nod, as you say?
Yeah, the Bronx nod. That's in the book.
All right.
Yeah, he gave the little baptism there. Bob met up with Ace in the street and nodded to him, and that was like kind of a secret thing among you're accepted.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, how did you come about to meet him?
I used to work in a studio in the Bronx called Backstreet Studios, and I'm a keyboard player, so I would do a lot of projects there. And Ace frequented the studio because he was best friends, but Bob was part owner of the studio, and I didn't even know that. And Eddie Solon, this engineer there, he was the guy who ran the studio and everything, and I was good friends with him, and I was doing a lot of work there. And I would always see Ace come in with, a six-pack under one hand and a girl on the other, and I'd say, oh, there's Ace Frehley. And I wasn't impressed then because I wasn't a Kiss fan.
Right.
It was weird. I was into the progressive rock bands, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes and stuff like that. I mean, I liked rock and roll bands, but Kiss wasn't one of them.
Right.
So it wasn't impressive. It was impressive to me to the point of, oh, there's a guy who made music. I always had respect for people who did that. But that's how I always saw it. So we were acquaintances for quite some time. And then to go further on, we had a mutual friend. He was having a sort of an affair with my best friend, and she always spoke of me to him. And she wanted us to meet eventually. And unfortunately, I don't want to give too much away in the book, but
right.
To a tragedy, that's how Ace and I bonded.
Okay. Well, yeah, before we get into some stories of you and Ace, why don't we give, actually, if you don't mind, a couple of the stories for the Kiss fans, some inner workings of Kiss. Why don't you tell us, I guess Ace joined the band. It was kind of an interesting way how he became a member. Wasn't it through an ad in the Village Voice?
Yeah, it was a Village Voice ad. It was weird. Bob McAdams bought that Village Voice. People don't know the little details there. And Bob said he bought the Village Voice. He circled the ad, and then he went over to Ace's house and said, Ace, check this out. And Bob wanted to audition. He was a guitar player, too. So, and Ace goes, I'm going to audition. So Bob and Ace went. Bob was there the whole time, witnessing all this. And Ace did go with one orange sneaker and one red sneaker. That was a famous thing that diehard Kiss fans, always read about. But it is true. He went with one red sneaker and one orange sneaker.
Were they Chuck Taylors?
I don't know what kind they were. They weren't Nikes, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, Ace went down to the audition, and he was cocky. And he kept on trying to jump the line. They had a lot of people auditioning, and he went down there. Bob said, Ace was his cocky self and went there and blew him away. And he had a callback. And then after the callback and they played a second time, he was in.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like from the book, it seems that Ace, he was always so interested in women and drinking, but I guess overall, something I don't know is, was he a really talented guitarist?
That's one thing I always say. He was a great guitar player. He's phenomenal. But the only thing that ruined it for me with him is I saw all his demons, his drinking and the drugs, and I always do the analogy of baseball players. He was like the Dwight Gooden and the Darryl Strawberry of rock and roll. Here you got Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, great ball players, and they ruined their careers with drinking and drugs.
Right.
And you could just imagine the baseball statistics and numbers they could have put up if they didn't get sidetracked with all their the drugs and things like that. And I say the same thing about Ace. I could only I know how great of a guitar player he is. And I could only imagine what he could have done if he didn't get stuck with the demons that go along with rock and roll.
Well, that's a very nice little analogy. Check out this segue I'm going to go with. Along with Strawberry and Gooden on those 80s New York Mets teams, there was some friction with the players like Lenny Dykstra and Keith Hernandez. It was kind of like that with Kiss also, I guess, is what I was gathering from the book. It seemed like there were two factions. Gene and Paul were kind of the do-gooders and the brains of the outfit, and Ace and Peter were there really just with the talent and just there for a good time. Is that kind of... You hit the nail on the head. That's pretty much how it went down, and that's how it is to this day. And I think, it is all my opinion, my observations, but, Ace and Peter made their own bed, so to speak. Right. By what they were doing, they made their bed, and they could have been 25% partners in Kiss or, had this, that, but they lost their bargaining power with Gene and Paul. Right. With their antics. They just did run sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah, that's what I guess Gene and Paul were really interested in the music, and they'd stay in shape and get ready for the tour, and I guess Ace and Peter they'd just rather let themselves go and party. Yeah, no, that was their downfall, so to speak. And it's weird, like you mentioned the Mets, all these great baseball players. Mm-hmm. You need that chemistry though to make a winning team, and unfortunately or fortunately for Gene and Paul, that's their winning team, was with, Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter, and they had to privately put up with these two guys, and they didn't even know if they were going to make the next show or, kill themselves on the road with drugs or whatever. It was just a very stressful situation for Gene and Paul. Right. Well, that's I don't know if you want to give this away, but I know that, it seems like, I guess Ace could handle his booze and he could still play and function when he was drinking, but I guess Peter had a little bit of more of a problem.